We have a brain for one reason and one reason only. That's to produce adaptable and complex movements. Movement is the only way we affect the world around us. I believe that to understand movement is to understand the whole brain. And therefore, it's important to remember when you're studying memory, cognition, sensory processing, they're there for a reason, and that reason is action. From neuroscientist Daniel Wolpert. Welcome back to the Neuroscience Meets Social and Emotional Learning podcast, where we cover the science-based evidence behind social and emotional learning for schools and emotional intelligence training in the workplace with tools, ideas, and strategies that we can all use for immediate results with our brain in mind. I'm Andrea Samadi, an author and an educator with a passion for learning, specifically on the topics of health, well-being, and productivity, and launched this podcast to share how important an understanding of our brain is to our everyday life and results, whether we're a teacher in the classroom, a student, or in the modern workplace. On today's episode number 240, we'll be speaking with Trent McEntire from Fire Up Your Brain, where you can see the brain-based training programs that he developed by chance for kids, seniors, and athletes when he stumbled across the answer to something that unlocked his brain through moving the body, leading him to develop the Fire Up Your Brain program, unleashing his mission to help others around the globe with his discovery. We just heard from Joshua Gillis on episode 238 about how important movement is for unlocking the brain, especially with athletes. So when I read Trent's story, I was blown away with how our last episode helped me to make some sense of how Trent's invention could possibly fire up your brain, since we just learned about how some simple movements that Joshua created had a profound impact on world-class athletes who had almost given up hope of getting better. Then I read his story and it caught me off guard a bit. From looking at Trent's videos and even the pictures of him on his website, I would guess he was a retired pro athlete of some sort who'd invented something that made a difference for his team. And then he's now extended this tool for kids and seniors. But there's much more to this story than meets the eye. Trent was born with a mild form of cerebral palsy and experienced pain and stiffness every day from the time he was a child. Now my mind goes back to our recent episode with Ashok Gupta, where he created an advanced brain retraining program to help people relieve chronic pain by breaking that vicious inflammation loop. And I wonder how Trent was able to move past his pain using his love of sports and repair his own body. I'll put Trent's bio in the show notes and think that he's going to tell his story in a way that we'll all feel the heart behind the Fire Up Your Brain program and participate with Trent's mission to spread the word of his work. Let's meet Trent McEntire and learn how we can fire up our brain, unlocking us to new heights in school, sports, and the workplace. Welcome, Trent. Thank you so much for meeting with me today to take us behind the scenes of the story of this incredible invention that you've created to fire up our brains. Thank you so much. Where have we reached you today?
I'm in Michigan.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
So I want to just start out to kind of give people an idea of the backstory that I have recorded already. And I don't know if you looked at it.
Yeah.
But, you know, when I looked at your website and what you have created, I wouldn't have guessed your story from looking at what you've done. I was kind of thinking maybe this guy's like a former athlete that's created something that helped his team and then found that it could help kids in schools. And so, but can you share those early years, what they were like for you? And then how did you discover something about this ball that made everything shift for you?
Yeah, there's really two legs of the story. The first one is that, I was born with a class 1 cerebral palsy. And it's important to note that I didn't know that. I wasn't told. It wasn't something that I grew up thinking about. However, I did experience and think about all of the limitations I had. And for those that maybe don't know, with cerebral palsy, you have like 5 common classifications. And when you get to like a class 3, you generally can tell by looking at someone that there's a marked gait difference, or there's something about it that you might say, oh, that's probably, somebody that was born with cerebral palsy. But a class 1, which a lot of people have and sometimes don't even realize it, you can't necessarily tell by looking at them. But the limitations are real, the restrictions are real, and having that brain injury at birth is real. But I didn't know about it. And I was always athletic. I played basketball, and I actually got into dance. And dance became something that helped me feel better, because there's so much strengthening and stretching and all the pieces that made me feel better. And because I was feeling better, I kept doing it, and I was athletic, so I had some skill, and I went with it. And it was a way for me to go to college, and I got a scholarship. I went to college, and then shortly into dancing in college, I woke up one morning and I could barely walk to the shower. I had so much pain and inflammation from the knees down that I thought, this is really serious. And it didn't make sense to me. And it was something that I felt like this could be career ending. I don't know if I can overcome this. It just happened that coincided with the holiday break. So I was home for a holiday, and I was just kind of complaining to my mom. I was like, I don't know what's going on here. Like, why have so much pain and inflammation from the knees down? I don't get it. And she's like, well, Trent, that's because you were born with cerebral palsy, and that's where it affected you. And I was like, wait, okay. So I was 19, and I'm like, wait a minute. So it was a lot to digest, and so she's like, do you remember when you were 3? And I was like, I don't really remember 3, but she's like, yeah, they cast your heels to the ground because you learned to walk on the balls of your feet, and you didn't have any range of motion in your ankles. So they forced your heels down and then cast you there to stretch your Achilles tendon. And then I had like a flash memory of having these casts, being winter, and having trash bags on them to be able to go in the snow, things like that. And I was like, oh yeah, I do remember that. But that was the only thing they did. So there was no injury or invasive procedure. But having that knowledge kind of lit the fire for me to start problem solving for my own body. So that's where my problem solving really lit on fire. And at that point, neuroscience wasn't something we talked about. Talking about the brain and patterning and all the details, there wasn't a vocabulary for it. So I just started leveraging my training with kinesiology and anatomy and physiology and all the things that I was studying in college as a part of my program, and created exercises, and some made it worse, some made it better. And I was able to rehab my own injury. And it wasn't until later that I realized what I was really doing. I was really leveraging principles of neuroscience to create better patterns that could stick so that I could have better movement quality on a regular basis. So that's the first arm. It's a profound one, but that's the first arm of what happened.
Well, this is amazing because we've just done a couple of episodes that I mentioned with Ashok Gupta from the UK, who was diagnosed with an autoimmune disease. And he did the same thing. He looked at the brain for, where was this pain coming from in his body? And he had the same problem. Like, we weren't talking about the brain back then. So I just wonder, where did you go in the very beginning? Like, because neuroscience hasn't come to the forefront until just recently.
Right. Yeah. It was this amazing thing where I happened to this led me into becoming a Pilates instructor. But I quickly discovered that I'm not seeing this the way other Pilates teachers are seeing this. People would ask me like, how did you know to do that? And why do you approach it like that? That's not in the manual. And I was like, yeah, I mean, I'm teaching Pilates, but what I'm really doing is something else. And then books started being published on neuroscience, things about the brain, how we're wired, how to rewire. And I'm like, well, I should read these. These are probably going to be good for me. And so I start reading them, and I'm like, this is what I'm doing. This is literally like a manual for how I'm approaching my clients and myself. And then I had a vocabulary for it. I had a way to express what I'm doing and a way to point to someone else's research and go, yeah, that's exactly the support for what I've been doing for all these years. And that was really important, because until that point, I was just what I thought, just teaching exercises the way I thought you should teach exercises, not realizing I was leveraging principles of, neuroplasticity to create powerful changes in people.
And I still don't think that people understand that enough, because,
Right.
I just interviewed this guy the other day that's been doing this with world-class athletes. And, he's explaining the things that he's doing, and it's all movement based. And then I saw what you did, and I'm like, it's just another way of doing kind of the same thing to get an end result. But there's a piece to this that you haven't addressed yet that kind of ties in. Yeah. And we've spent many episodes talking about reading in the brain.
Yeah.
We talked to David A. Souza. He spent his whole life talking about how the brain learns. And a lot of educators read his manuals. And that's really where I started to learn about the brain as it relates to reading. So how did you unlock the secret for reading that marked the end of your reading challenges through brain training? Where did that happen?
Yeah, so it was embarrassing for most of my life that I wasn't able to read without falling asleep. I'd get one sentence in and I would just fall asleep, and it was quite challenging. And it's one of those things where I can think back to even like third grade, where my third grade teacher at parent-teacher conferences is like, well, he has a hard time with reading, and so what we're going to do is give him more reading. And it's one of those things where I could comprehend, I could read, but there was something that was actually neurologically and physiologically off and imbalanced for me that was causing the problem. It wasn't my ability to read. And so giving me more of that just made it worse. Right. I'm like, well, this is double terrible, because I'm already slow at reading at school. So I have homework in third grade, which back then you didn't. And then also I got this green box of these books that I had to read extra and answer these questions every night. And it was just torture. And so then I learned to hate reading. And then it was like, well, I'll do I can go to school for dance. Yeah, I don't have to read much. That's awesome. I'll do every physical thing I can do. Not that you don't have to read for dance, you do and study, but it really wasn't like going to law school or something like that, where it's so reading intense. So I would problem solve it in college and get up really early, stand up, hold my books, read so I wouldn't fall asleep and kind of get through. And then it became audiobooks. And then I would say, I'm reading a good book. Well, I was listening to an audiobook, and I was ashamed of that, because everybody else I knew could read and read really fast. My wife is an incredible reader. And, in fact, reading keeps her awake, doesn't make her fall asleep. And I never understood that. Well, so I'm telling a client one day that I'm reading this great book, this series of books. And I was listening to it in audio. And I said, I'm going to California for a conference, and I got to get the next book. And so the next time she saw me, she brought me the book, thinking that she was doing me a huge favor and something really kind. And I'm like, oh, that's great. Now I have to get the audio. I've got to listen to it before I get back, because everybody else in the world can read this book on the plane and report back that they loved it. And it was really easy. This was going to be a huge task for me, but now I have to like stage a response. It just felt terrible, but I feel like obligated to do that. That people pleaser in me, I suppose, at the time. Right. And so I took the book with me. Of course, I didn't read it. And while I was out there, I actually ran into a vision therapist and discovered that my eyes didn't work together. They didn't track and see the same thing at the same time. And with just a couple of eye tracking exercises, like my range of motion improved, my ability to read suddenly exploded. I mean, just minutes of doing exercises. So I had gone to my booth and missed a friend. They had stopped by and wrote me a note. And so I picked up the note and I just read like I've never read in my life. I just couldn't believe the speed at which I read and comprehended everything. And I was like, wait, did I just do that? and that was the piece where I was like, okay, I need to really investigate the implications of the eyes in tracking on brain performance and output, because I just experienced a tremendous change in just a few minutes. And that was amazing. And so, I read the whole book on the plane back. And then I got the rest of the series and I read the book, and my wife's like, who are you? You want to go buy more books? You don't want to download the audio? I'm like, no, I can read now. She's like, what's happening,
because I have a struggling reader in my house,
Mm,
and it's getting better over the years. We don't put pressure on her and make her read more books. That we know that
right.
doesn't work for sure. But I'm just thinking in my head, what do? I buy her this speed ball and she does the activities before her homework and it changes
Yeah.
her brain. What happened?
Yeah. So from there, I before I got to the BrainSpeed Ball, I was looking at what's available, and vision therapists do great work. Um, but here's the thing, like it just isn't fun enough. It just isn't like, like grab it and go and have a good time, because when it's fun, the brain listens, and and all people stay curious. Kids, older adult, you stay curious when it's fun. Everybody enjoys that. Um, and so I just thought, how could we make this fun? Really, like as a foundational piece, this has to be fun. And that's where the BrainSpeed Ball came in. It's like, I'm going to make this, my favorite color is orange. Orange is a great contrast. Let's make it a bright orange with black letters and numbers on it, so that it's just something that you feel like you want to pick up and you want to play with. And so when you look at the power of eye tracking, and you have connections to your ability to focus, your ability to read, your ability to feel confident in what you're doing because you feel more organized in your body, you're regulated. It goes on and on. Like just the
Right.
connection between eye performance and the rest of your body and brain is tremendous. And so I just developed a game of catch where we throw this ball back and forth, and you're tracking it with your eyes coming into your hands, and you're finding a letter or number on it, and then you're just saying it out loud when you catch it, and you just play back and forth. And because you're throwing it to different places and you're catching it in different locations, your eyes are tracking and receiving in many different places. And so you're doing eye exercises just built into tracking the ball. And because you're calling out what you're seeing on the ball, you're going through a brain processing cycle. So you're using these eye tracking and brain processing over and over and over again while playing a fun game of catch. And you don't even have to speak the same language for it to work. You really, it's just, eye tracking is so powerful that as long as you keep it fun, you can make pretty huge things happen. So yes, for your daughter with reading, with homework, yeah, it's like 1 to 5 minutes before work, before her reading or her work, and ask her what she notices, and then see what you notice. It's been amazing to hear stories. It's one thing if I have a client that I'm working with one-on-one, and I can help them discover and open up and find more abilities in their body through these eye tracking exercises. But something else, when somebody has the ball that I've never met, I get a call from a mom in Chicago. She's like, I got this ball for me, and I had it on the counter, and my 13-year-old picked it up and just kind of fell in love with it. And she's like, Trent, you have to understand that my 13-year-old struggles with homework, and it's such a struggle that it's a daily battle in my household. It is, the temperature of our house is like this battle of homework because it's so hard for her. She played with this ball for 5 minutes, and she sat and did her homework for the first time in her life. I mean, I still get goosebumps because I know, having kids myself, like that kind of disruption, that kind of energy and sadness and stress in the house can be really overwhelming. So to hear that someone I've never met and a kid just invented their own game, but because they were using their eyes and they were tracking the ball, it just like pulled it together for them. And it really happens in a few minutes. And it seems impossible, but it's just not, because the eyes are that powerful.
So I'm thinking of so many different applications here, but because I'm a former teacher and I've got a struggling reader, I'm always going to go to the school
Yeah.
application first, just
Sure.
because. And I've sold so many products to the schools. So if a teacher sees this, they go online and they buy one ball, and then they get a whole program that would go with it. Is that correct?
Yeah, right now there's a program called Fire Your Brain for Kids.
Okay.
And what would happen is, you essentially have your instruction on the basics of the game, so you understand how to do the eye tracking, because that's an important element. And then you have a bunch of different games you can play, because you want to make sure that it stays fun and creative. And so it really is about teaching you how to play the game and giving you different ways of playing, but then also setting you free to come up with your own games. And teachers are great with that. You just give them the basics of what's required. There's just got to be eye tracking and fun. If you've got eye tracking and fun, you can make up any game. We've had preschool classes. We can't share the video, but I was able to see amazing, like a circle of preschoolers, and They don't know their letters and numbers when they're doing this, and they roll the ball. Somebody catches, they put the finger on something, and then with the teacher, they learn what that letter and number is. They trace it on the ball, and they roll it, and everybody's watching it go from kid to kid to kid to kid to them. And what'd you get? What'd you get? And they don't even realize that they're doing eye tracking. And so for 5 or 10 minutes, the whole group is watching this ball go around the circle and exercising their eyes. Right. And then their next activity is even more powerful. So it's really, it doesn't have to be like, here's the way to play the game. It's just, here's the basics. You have to have eye tracking, and it's got to be fun. But then some examples of how to play, and just for you to feel free to be creative.
I love it. I love this so much because I know that, to get the students learning, they do their spelling and they stand up and they recite their spelling words. And, brain bites or, just shifting the learning for 5 minutes is all they need. But a lot of people don't know what to do with that brain bite. So now they have a tool, which I think is just amazing that you've created this. This is groundbreaking, really, for those in the classroom.
I think that it's exciting that teachers could have a resource that could be so simple and fast. I remember, I don't know about you, but I know for me, when I was in elementary, recess was actually our brain work. Right. You went on the merry-go-round and you spun in circles so that your inner ear and your visual systems were challenged. You're on swing sets going back and forth. You're climbing and connecting on monkey bars. You're running. All these activities were really brain-based activities. And so, but at the same time, there's a certain level of athleticism that's required to do them. Right. And if you have a weakness, then the merry-go-round makes you throw up, And so then this is something that anybody can do at any level. We have all ages and abilities. We even have youngsters that aren't able to necessarily catch a flying ball, that if you just roll it or you kind of hand it to them, it still works. It's just really simple. So you don't have to have a brain or neuro background to be able to play a game of catch and ask your youngsters to track and see it,
Got it. Well, I got to go to the next part of this because it's so important to me, and that's the topic of health. Yeah. And our podcast actually took a turn towards health and wellness around September of 2020, kind of in the middle of the pandemic. And we started looking at the top 5 health staples that I thought could move the needle for all of us to improve our physical and mental health. And for someone like yourself who's overcome health challenges using exercise and movement, what can you say about this movement gap, or getting kids to actually move, and maybe even older people who might have lost hope with the medical community these days? How can this
help? Yeah. I started using the terminology of the movement gap when I realized that, my clients and friends and family are leveraging the medical resources, and they're just not designed to support you 100% with what you're doing. It's not that they're not good and strong and qualified. They are. It's just you also have to build your own practice. And so because people don't necessarily know how to do that, they fall into this movement gap where they're done with their physical therapy or whatever therapy they're doing, but they haven't quite achieved what they want to achieve. Their quality of life is still lower than they want it to be, and they have plenty of possibility. They just don't know how to get there. And so there they sit in that gap. And so for me, having something like the BrainSpeed Ball and some kind of movement strategy helps get them out of that gap and kind of fill that in, so that you have a resource that you can do on your own, whether it's because you're stressed or because you have a movement limitation, or reading is challenging, or you're grieving. It could be anything that you're working on to get yourself out of that gap.
Got it. And even what about high level athletes? I saw some of your videos with like a goalie getting the ball. How are you using it with higher level athletes?
Yeah. So, what's amazing is that high level athletes, it can be deceiving, as if they have all of these abilities because they look amazing. They can jump high, they can run fast. And then you go and you have them move their eyes in different directions, and you see like, oh, they can't catch a ball. That's what they do for a living. But when they catch it over here, they drop it a lot. And you realize that their eye strength and range of motion is limited. And if you open that up and you improve their eye strength and range of motion and coordination, their athletic performance goes up, their reaction time goes up. And so you think about like a baseball player standing at home plate, and if he has a weakness looking to his left and he's right-handed, it's going to be hard for him to track the ball. So when I watch baseball, I'm like, I'm watching his eyes. I'm like, he's going to strike out because he can't see the ball. He's a super athletic, quite capable athlete, but he's got weakness in his eyes. Or I'll see like a figure skater who's isn't really training senses, and so they're not doing eye training, they're not doing inner ear training, and so they're beautiful and they can skate, but they fall in every jump. Well, that's sensory training, that's eye training, and so that it's really a missing piece. And for athletes to have something that's really simple and kind of like instantly within a minute or two hacks their brain to give them that boost, and they go, wow, now I feel like I'm firing all cylinders. I feel like I have this capacity I didn't have before.
See, this is what's amazing. It's making me think back to that guy that did these strange movements for these athletes. And you'd think that it's weird doing this. Some of the things he's done has kind of mimicked like the fish and reptiles, and it looks weird. I'm looking at the videos and he's moving his feet in a certain way, but it's changing their brain pattern because they haven't been used to moving in this way. And so that's why I think this is powerful, because it's getting the athlete or the student to use their brain in a different way, which strengthens a new neural pathway, which I can understand gets the results. I'm just curious, have you done results or any sort of research that really tracks like what's happening to a person at their brain level when they're doing this, other than just like tracking? Or what?
Yeah, well, the reality is that the research has been done that shows that when your eye mobility and your eye tracking is strong, that the movement output increases. So that's not research that I've done myself. I've demonstrated it, and I've shown it real with my clients and with friends and family, but that research has been done, and you can look it up. I mean, it's something that I love that exists, because I'm not here to make promises that I can't keep. And we've seen athletes jump higher after a couple of minutes, run faster after just a couple of minutes, because the eyes are that powerful. It's not because it's like sometimes athletes they'll kind of push back. I love this. They push back and they say, well, I'm warmed up now, so now I'm faster. It's like, okay, let's keep going with that. Let's make sure that you are completely warm, and now let's run a before and after test. And it's like, oh yeah, now you're running even faster, because the eyes are that powerful. And so we do have some people in some of the teaching groups that I work with that are pursuing research because they have certain interests, and I encourage that and want to support them in that as much as possible. But for me, I want people to have a movement solution and help express and know that it's really easy and it's accessible. But if somebody wants to do research, I would support that, because I think the more information we have, it's better. But I'm really focused on helping to spread the word and to help people understand how simple and easy it is to get access to better performance.
Definitely. And not to get bogged in the research, but the other person that I was interviewing kept talking about that sensory input, something they see or experience gives a different movement output. That was the explanation, and just go that simple. Like I don't need to go any more in depth. They're seeing something on the ball that's changing their movement, right?
Exactly. It's that simple. It's that simple. And even though you could go into all kind of science and chemical and all that, it doesn't matter.
No,
it's not going to change. It's not going to change. You don't have to understand all of that. And in fact, I think it can make it more complicated, and you can just enjoy the game, keep it fun, and get out of your head. We think too much. We don't need to think about our thoughts anymore,
Exactly. So what exactly then is the BrainSpeed Ball? So how does it work, and how would it help someone with neurological conditions to improve the quality of their life?
Yeah, I mean, the person that comes to mind is a friend and client of mine that had Parkinson's, and Parkinson's is a movement disorder, and so the BrainSpeed Ball was something that just lit him up. I mean, it was something that would bring him so much joy and happiness. And for someone in going through, the different stages of Parkinson's, that's incredible. And for him to have something that makes him feel more steady on his feet, and feel more positive, to feel like he's got interaction with people, because as the disease progresses, you have less and less social interaction. You're going out less, and people don't necessarily know how to interact with you and what to say and what to do. And so if you have a game you can play with anybody, and I'll play with whatever that condition is. I mean, whether it's Parkinson's or they've suffered a stroke or MS, we've worked with them all. And for me, it's just a really easy tool that they can feel like, oh, I'm capable of doing more, even though the disease has a real degeneration that's going on. There's a reality to that. But while you're experiencing that, you can feel like, oh gosh, I feel better today. I feel like I'm a little happier. I'm a little more steady on my feet, or whatever it might be, or I have less pain or more range of motion in my neck. It could be something simple, but that can be huge, because a lot of times in those situations, there just isn't much positivity that's happening. It's just a lot of negative and decline. So to give something fun that they can do, and with their caretaker, with their spouse, with their kids, with their grandkids, it's pretty awesome. Seeing grandkids and those with Parkinson's play the game together is really special. And it's just a connection that maybe couldn't happen otherwise.
I love when people have invented something that has the heart behind it. And from someone who has put stuff out into the world, I know it's not easy. And I noticed as I was actually writing the questions, I had to figure out how to do the TM next to the trademark, next to fire up your ball. I was like, oh, how do I make sure I put the trademark in there? And when did you trademark it? And I just wonder, like, how was that process so that you can honor this invention as yours?
Yeah, it's exciting actually, because just yesterday I received my paperwork from federal government. It takes a very long time. Like, you file and you wait and you go through a process, and then years later. And so this is now about 3 years before I received the paperwork to verify the federal trademark. So now we can actually use the R with the circle around it, because we have a registered federal trademark, which is super exciting. And to me, it just demonstrates my commitment to the validity and the reality of helping people with this and making it really simple. But I think it's an important thing to go through. I've done patents before in my life, but this one is important to me because, it's something that I've just seen touch so many people's lives, and I want people to be able to trust it, and to trust me, and to trust how powerful the eyes are, and hear that, really hear that. And so I think by going through the trademark process, it demonstrates that I'm really serious about this.
Definitely.
I'm serious about the fun of this,
Yep. No, I noticed that creating your questions for you. As I was thinking about this, I thought, wow, because that it's time consuming, and I know you want to get this out to the world, which is why, you're coming on the podcast. I just wonder, what other avenues have you looked at? Because I've interviewed someone from Shark Tank. Have you thought about, going on any of those type of shows to share or get more support with marketing?
Yeah, I have, but I found that word of mouth is really powerful, and we actually are in the process of shifting our marketing efforts and sharing this work in a much more profound way. So I'm interested in getting people experiences with the ball, and so we're going to be focusing more on me doing that through social media, live social media. And I did one just this week, and it's risky, but it's really fun because I don't know the response I'm going to get. So here I am on Instagram Live, doing before and afters with the ball, hoping that something changes, and then hearing from them, if it does. And so I kind of like that, so I'm taking the approach of, putting me on the spot and play the game and see what happens. And no, like I told this person earlier this week, I promise that one of three things will happen. It's going to get better, it's going to get worse, or it's going to stay the same. I promise. And I think that just speaks to not having expectations. But I'll tell you, the only time that I've seen it not get better or get worse is when the game was too easy or way too hard. When you just find a game that you drop the ball once in a while, it works. I've seen it work every time, even with clients that have one working arm, minimal pincer grasp in their hands. It's just because they're tracking with the eyes. It's incredible.
So we've talked about if you're a teacher and you see this, and how does that work for each school?
Yeah, I mean, what we find is very successfully having teachers have the program, and then they'll get as many balls as they need for their classroom. And sometimes they have the budget and ability to have every kid or half the kids have a ball, so that you have a partner and you can play. Um, but that program will support them in learning how to teach the kids how to play the game. The kids don't need the program; the teacher needs the program in this case, right? And it's something that can be shared. It's meant to be shared. They don't have to license it. The idea is that we get these balls in the hands of the kids and help them understand how to use them. And so it's a matter of, whoever is going to teach the program, they should have the program. So if you've got 10 teachers that are going to use it, they should all have access to the program. That's going to be important, so they can go through the videos and they can understand, and they can ask questions because they have that ability. They can reach out and ask me questions and get information and how to support their situation. So it's more of like whatever teacher is using it, they have the program, and then whatever kids are using the ball, they have a ball as well. And we often find that the parents buy the kids balls for home too, because they really want to have that ability to sit and do that before they do their homework, or before they before they get on the bus to go to school because they have anxiety, or something. It could be anything that kind of shows up.
And then take me through the process. If you're a sports team, you would probably have the person running the sports team with one ball. How would you have used it for that soccer team?
Yeah, so every athlete gets a ball. That's really important, especially because with athletes, we're going to be playing games that use 1, 2, 3, 4 balls. And with athletes, because they're already often playing a sport with a ball, they're handling the balls in quick manner. So we want to do skills that they're not good at, which is 2 at one time, one flying toward them while one's going away. And so you want to have enough that can happen. And I coach volleyball, and so for my college volleyball girls, ladies, I should say, they each have one, and I develop games for them to help them with their speed at the net, their reaction timing, and creative ways to use multiple balls and have them work together. So it's not just me playing the game with them, but them working together. So, for the coaches or the trainers that are using them, they want to learn how to use it with the program, but then give the kids the power, or give their athletes the power to come up with their own games too. It just becomes a normal cultural part of their warm up before they play.
Very cool. And then take me inside, like, let's say we're going to a senior's home. And so everyone, how would you work with, let's say, a senior's home?
Yeah, it's oftentimes in a senior's home, they have somebody that comes into the home to run a program or run an activity, or to, it's like, every Friday is a certain activity. And that's usually the person who has the program. Or if there's somebody that's in residence there that works there that takes the seniors through programs, then they can have the program and then teach the seniors how to play. The seniors don't have to have the program to learn how to play the game, but usually in those situations, if you have that leader's the one that has the program, and they learn how to use it, then they convey that to whoever they're working with. So in this case, the seniors, it's good for every senior to have a ball, because then because you can also throw it against the wall. And for me personally, it's one of my favorites because I have one at every desk that I use, because it's a way to get focused. And if I have a lot of screen time and I'm stressed, I can take a break and just reconnect myself through playing with the ball. So they're by themselves in their room, or they're bored and they can get their neighbor to play a game of BrainSpeed Ball together. It becomes a fun social event for them too.
Oh, I love it. This is fun. I like this. So what are other ways people can work with you? If they go to your website, that you said you're doing now some lives so that people can get an idea of what this is, but do you have other ways that people can work with you?
Yeah, so we have a section on the website called Ask Trent. And so you can ask any question regarding the BrainSpeed Ball, or what you see, or anything that you might have, whether you have a ball now or you're thinking about it and you just have questions. And then a lot of times I take those questions and I turn them into videos, and you'll see on the website there are videos that I filmed from people that have asked questions to give a good idea, so that you have a resource, that you can leverage. And then, sort of like looking off into the future, and kind of the bigger vision here is what I'm really excited about, because what I'm preparing to do is to leverage the professionals that use this with their clients in many different spaces, and create programs that can happen for those with Parkinson's, all over the country. So we have a pilot program that launches next year. That'll be our test. And then from there, we'd like to go to 5 cities and then grow from there, where we have a program where we can take these movement professionals through the training, and then they can go run an event for those with Parkinson's and their caretakers in their local area, so that they have a resource and they have that community that can be built and supported that way.
I think this is such a good idea. I am so impressed with this, with your vision, with you actually creating this based on your background that, we didn't really go into it that much, but it wasn't an easy time growing up for you. So for you to have created this out of everything that you've gone through is phenomenal. I want to congratulate you on putting this out into the world. This is a wonderful
Thank you.
tool.
I appreciate that. I think that the fact that it comes from such a personal place doesn't make it easier. It actually makes it harder, because every time I share this and I talk about this, it's all so personal. And so I have to be willing to sit in that vulnerability to express, like, yeah, I failed first grade because I couldn't read. Like, that's super embarrassing. But also I'm super empowered by that, because other people have to, and worse, so I feel like it's a way to help hold the vision accountable and hold me accountable for showing up. And it's not just, oh yeah, I invented something that I'm selling. Like that's
Right.
the easy part.
Yeah.
That's just not what this
Not it
is.
at all. Not at all, which is why I got so excited when I was creating this, because there's so much more behind it, especially for someone that's been in the classroom and watched a student struggle, and then to have a tool that is cutting edge now. Like, we're all looking for what can we do now? How can we impact the brain now? And here's something that you've created that's making an impact. Is there anything, Trent, that we've missed that's really important that we just haven't covered yet that you think we should touch on?
I just think it's important to reiterate that this is a simple and fun game, and that what makes it powerful is that the eyes have such a crucial connection to the brain and how it performs, we're tapping into that. And you don't have to have a brain background or understand any of the complication of the science behind it to go, man, we could really leverage this. I know somebody who could really benefit from this. I could benefit from this. And it's that simple. It can be simple and it can be fun. It doesn't have to be hard and complicated like so many other things that we have in our life.
Wow. Well, for people to connect with you, I'm going to put all the links to your website, fireupyourbrain.com, and they can email you, connect with you on Facebook. Is there any other social media that I'm missing? Are you on Instagram?
Instagram as well. Yep.
Okay. Instagram. I'll make sure I put everything in there. I want to thank you very much, Trent, for coming on the podcast today and sharing your personal story of really how you came to discover BrainSpeed Ball to help others who might be struggling in the way that we know so many people are. And you mentioned so many different areas that I wasn't even thinking of: anxiety, students, not just with reading struggling, but with what's going on in our schools today. Yeah. So if someone wants to try the program, do they just go to your website? Is that the best way? Yeah,
just go to the website. Yeah, so where you'd go to fireupyourbrain.com, and you can find the program that makes sense for you, whether it's kids, athletes, or seniors. And it's a really easy system. And think of it like a Netflix or a streaming service for BrainSpeed Ball, and that you have the videos that keeps track of what you watched. And if you leave and come back, it'll take off right where you left, so you don't have to remember where you were. And it's really organized and really easy. And we find that the system we use is like very easy for all ages and abilities, so that sometimes technology can be confusing and get in the way. We find this is really simple. So you get the videos you need, you get the ball, it comes in the mail, and then you're not alone. You can always ask questions. And that's a really important thing to know. You're not alone.
Perfect. And I think your website's great as well. It walks you through every step of the way. So I'll make sure I put the step-by-step way to have a look at BrainSpeed Ball. And thank you so much.
It's my pleasure. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you. Some final thoughts at the end of this episode. When someone who has spent their entire lifetime thinking of ways to help others, like Trent McEntire, I think it's really important to support their work. If you're a teacher in the classroom looking for new ways to have your students take brain breaks, be sure to visit his website, fireupyourbrain.com, and read through some of the K-12 educator testimonials. If you work with athletes, we've spent many episodes on this podcast talking about the importance of movement in the brain, but now we can add how eye tracking is sharpening an athlete's focus and agility. And if you know someone who's struggling with everything that goes along with a neurological disorder, we're going to take a deeper dive into this topic this week with Dr. Philippe Doyon. He's a board-certified neurologist who focuses on how to take charge of our health when we're faced with illness in our life. But in the meantime, I trust the work that Trent has put behind BrainSpeed Ball and hope that we'll all take a serious look at what he's created to get us all moving with our brain and mind. I'll see you in a few days.